Welcome to the League of Logic podcast where you can learn how to think for yourself. Check out our website at leagueoflogic.com, where you can find out more about who we are and what we're doing. We have some information and study resources that will cover our basic topics, and we have a contact page where you can leave us a comment or a question. Please do, because we'd love to hear from you. We also have an app that is available on the App Store and on the Google Play Store. Please leave us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're using, or comment and like if you're watching the video. Either way, subscribe and follow, and share it with someone you think might like it or get something out of it. It would help us out a lot in getting the word out. Thank you for listening to the League of Logic podcast. Now, as always, get ready for a much needed conversation about truth. Yeah, you got to mix it up a little bit. You don't want to, try two ride-ons in a row.
Yeah.
Right at the end of the music, you'll just end up messing it up. So,
well, you just mixed up everything because you skipped Robin's woo.
Woo!
There it is.
Not the same.
No. No. Man, I went back and watched the podcast from last week and listened to it like several times, which was surprising to me, actually. But it is crazy listening to myself because
It's crazy listening to you for us, too.
I believe it, man. I believe it. There's a couple points where I was like, Andrew, do you really believe that? I mean, because, I don't think you really thought.
Yeah, that's.
I don't think you
stuff.
thought that out.
I don't
Yeah.
think this was very well thought out.
And I was like, well, yeah, I think so. And thought about it. But one funny thing that runs in my family is like the men repeat themselves. Like we tell the same story multiple times whenever we meet somebody. And that's exactly what happened on the podcast. I was listening to it with Chad. And I was like, dude, are you rewinding this podcast? Because I've literally said this like 4 times already. And now I'm hearing it for a 5th time. So it was weird.
It's always fun to listen to yourself talk.
Yeah.
I can't stand it.
That normally doesn't. It normally doesn't happen whenever I'm speaking in front of the church. Like then I just say stupid stuff, but I don't repeat it too
Or
often.
does it?
Oh man, it probably does.
I don't know, man. I tend to repeat myself, particularly whenever I get to a spot in whatever I'm trying to say and I forget what I'm going to say next.
Mm.
And then because always the first thing that comes to mind is what you already said. And you're like, I said this before, but I'm going to say it again.
It's good. It's
You know,
real
what-
good.
you know what I've realized is that most great speakers do repeat themselves at some point or another. Maybe not back to back, but they do repeat themselves because the truth and good wisdom is worth repeating.
Paul did. He said, look here now, I'm about to tell y'all something. And then he'd say, I'm telling you something. And he'd say, hey, I just told y'all something.
Everybody's like, what just happened?
I was like, yes.
Oh man.
Wait, that's what you said?
Man, I tell you, it's been one of those weeks. We don't even have like any idea whatsoever what we're supposed to talk about today, really. Because it's
Oh yeah.
been one of those weeks where there's been so many things happen. I mean, of course, it's all going to turn into like a spiritual battle type thing in the end, or you know what I mean?
It'll all work out.
It'll all work out in the end, but
There's a lot of stuff going on, man.
this week was almost overwhelming.
If we could get enough people sending in comments and questions, we might could have a Q&A.
Yeah. That's why it's so important that they subscribe to the channel. You got to hit the subscribe button. That means a bunch. And then you got to make a comment or even ask a question or even say you guys are wrong about this and put it in there. Give us some topics.
The way the subscribe button, what it means to me, is like it's like a self-advertisement. Like, if someone wants to advertise our channel, you hit the subscribe button because then that goes into the algorithm, And then YouTube's like, oh, okay, this is going up. It needs to be put up more.
So it's more like Rumble because YouTube thinks we're a bunch of conservative people that believe the Bible, and they hate people like that. And so their algorithm already has us flagged as conservative, Bible-believing Christian white males, which is basically the same thing as Nazis. And so we're flagged.
Domestic terrorists.
We're probably also in the with beards category.
Yeah, with beards category.
A step farther.
Facial hair, which makes you masculine, and you can't be a masculine man these days and get any attention.
We got a lot of red flags going against us.
It's so a shame. It's because like all the red flags, like maybe 30 years ago would have been great. And they're like, that man's a conservative. He's a man. He's got a great facial hair. He's masculine. He believes the Bible. I like that dude. And now we're all like, stay away from that man.
You know, this guy that we just had talking at gave the sermon at the couples retreat. Just my wife and I went to, and Andrew and his wife just went to a couples retreat this past weekend, and the speaker was a very masculine man to me. He talked about hunting. He was a hunter. He had the perfect beard that even gave Robin some rivalry.
Yeah, I don't know how his beard was that
his
perfect.
beard was just great. It was a white beard though, like touch of gray type beard, but he, carried himself well. He talked masculine, and he spoke truth. He gave some pretty good wisdom for couples, and I don't know, just the way he came off, the way he was telling his stories. I liked him.
Was he married?
Yeah, he was.
He was married, had a family.
Last year, the
kids.
Preacher didn't bring his wife.
Beard.
I just wondered.
Owned firearms. Lived in America.
Oh, man.
So what's been happening in the world?
I found a cool book on Amazon.
Ooh.
Because, Whoopi Goldberg said that the Holocaust was not about the Jews.
Oh, my goodness.
You remember that?
I heard that.
Yeah, which was awesome, right? When she said it, I was like, you remember a while back whenever I said that the woke monster is going to run out of things to eat, so it's going to start chewing on its own feet? Well, when it got to Whoopi, it was chewing its own butthole, but it started eating itself is what's happening, right? She's like the butthole of the woke monster because she's a moron. That's name calling, by the way, and you shouldn't do that. Just for all the kids listening. Anyway, so I was like, why in the world would she start that? Well, the first thing I found was at the ADL, this place that, what's it called, the ADL? What's the name? What's the ADL stand for? Just like that, my brain went away and I lost it. Whatever. They changed the definition of racism.
Of course.
Yeah. So at one time, the racism definition was racism is a belief that a particular race is superior or inferior to another, that a person's social or moral traits are predetermined by his or her inborn biological characteristics. Racial separatism is the belief, most of the time based on racism, that different races should remain segregated and apart from one another, which is the racism we're all used to. Doesn't really matter what color you are. It's just different races. One thinks they're better than the other. We should all stay apart. That's racism. But now it says racism is the marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on a social constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people.
So racism is literally only for black people now.
And it's only caused by white people.
Which is what she said in another interview with, I forget, one of those comedian guys.
The Late Show people.
Trevor Noah.
Yeah. Her point was that during the Holocaust, you couldn't say that was racism because they were both white people groups. And so I was like, wonder where she came up with that. Well, I looked at Amazon. Check this out. How Jews Became White Folks. There's a book.
Wealth of knowledge.
That's great.
How Jews Became White Folks and what that says about race in America.
That's great. Did this just recently come out?
1999. It was written in 1999. Oh, man. You're just like,
what? You just look up these titles like, oh, there is a book.
Wow. Well, that's what it was. I was, so I saw the racism thing. She was like, the Jews are white folks. And I was like, how did Jews become white folks? That's what I typed.
Bam.
It's amazing what Uncle Google will do. And it's a socialist place too. You know, Uncle Google's like, yes, Jews are white folks, and here's a book that proves it. Oh man, I tell you,
that's a very selfish point of view.
it is. It's all about how
Because
people
your
treat
oppression
people.
matters more than anybody else's oppression.
She even said out loud, this is why she got suspended. She's probably going to end up getting fired.
She can't really call it oppression.
She can't really call it oppression. Yeah.
No, that would be too good.
Yeah. She said
She'll
If-
quit. Go ahead.
if we call it racism, that takes us down a whole nother road. And it really, what she meant was, if we call it racism, it puts them on the same path as black people. And we can't have that. Because black people are superior oppressors, oppressed. The black people are the superior oppressed, right? No one else can be oppressed.
That's basically
That's what she thinks.
that's basically what she's saying.
And that's what this ADL place has said as well. It has changed her definition. Unbelievable.
She's no longer the queen victim.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I don't even know how she can say that she's a victim, though.
She married a white guy on top of everything else.
Whoopi. There's a reason why her name is Whoopi Cushion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard the backstory.
I haven't heard the backstory.
I haven't either.
Give us the backstory, Brian.
Rob Robin's a better storyteller.
I don't know
so-
this backstory. I forgot it.
Well,
Mhm.
I heard, I don't know if it's reliable sources or not, but I heard that when she just started out being whatever avenue of entertainment she was going, she had a pick of a stage name. So she picked Whoopee Cushion. And her mom is like, no, you need something that stands out more. So she went with Goldberg because it sounded more white or something like that. That's
You know,
what I heard.
It worked well for the wrestler.
Goldberg is Jewish, ain't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's what
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a great point.
that's what Ben Shapiro was saying. It's like, yeah, that's Jewish.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man. I tell you, it's getting scarier though, because the other thing I had mentioned a while back ago, and that is these people, my granddad used to say that, and I hate that saying, right? Or them type people.
Mm-hmm.
That in of itself is kind of condescending to whatever them type people are. But
Yeah.
these people that are on the left, the liberal side, that have these socialist, communist, Marxist type ideas that they're trying to push on everybody else, the wokeism and all that stuff. I mean, it's reaching a point now where, I mean, I really feel like that Americans, like true Americans, are waking up to it, you know, and I think that they realize it as well. You see it in things like these Democrat folks are dropping out of the race. We're going to retire this year. Well, that's because they can't stand it anymore. They know what's happening. But the scary part about that, which I mentioned once before, and it's actually happening, is if you get somebody who has nothing left to lose, you know, into a situation of total desperation. Like I have tried everything in my power and ability to accomplish whatever your goal is, and I don't have anything else. And on the surface, it appears that they have been defeated. But there's still one more step, and that is total insanity, chaotic, just go wild, like, you know, wild man. You back an animal in a corner, what does it do? It just lunges at like, rah! Right? That is what's happening in the Democratic Socialist Marxist Party right now. You know, we've talked about the Great Reset thing, and the Great Reset was to get the economies to all join together, one World Economic Forum and all that good stuff. And the thing that was getting in their way right now is America. All the other basically economies in the world pretty much are on board with this whole idea of, you know, maybe it's not a bad idea. They weren't expecting Trump to come in, who pumped our economy up, made it really strong again, gave us a good military. And now, so what Obama and all the ones before him had started, you know, slowly tearing down our economy, Trump built it back up stronger. And now Joe Biden has come in. He's supposed to be able to knock it back down. The Great Reset won't work until the dollar is devalued to the point of destruction, like it's worthless.
Mm-hmm.
You do that through inflation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guarantee inflation? Well, you just print a whole bunch of money, government spending. So what's Joe Biden been doing, man? He's been spending money like crazy. He's got all these Build Back Better plans and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And so what I'm scared of is that it's been 1 year, and you see how much nonsense has happened. Everybody sees it. Even Democrats are tired of it, right? It's like, this is dumb. But it no longer matters that everyone sees it. What matters is the Democrat socialists are backed into a corner, and so here they come like a wild, ravage animal and say, we got it. This is our last chance. We have to just go all out insane to accomplish the destruction of our dollar so that we could do this great reset thing as part of their plan. And so enter the Canadian truckers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, hold on. This is the only way they're going to destroy our economy is to continue our mandates, obviously, because the coronavirus, as the Klaus guy said, is the great opportunity we're going to initiate it right now because this is where we can do it. If they were to remove all of our restrictions, no mask mandates for anybody, no vaccine mandates for anybody, travel could be open, trade could run again, docks open.
So you're talking about like also taking away tariffs and stuff like that?
Well, tariffs are another thing, but, kind of. I mean, like the reason they say that we can't get stuff off the boats is because of COVID. We can't have but so many people there. And then there's some people that don't want to comply with the mandate. So we just don't have the manforce to be able to unload the boats fast enough because of the shutdown period we had for so long, right? We got a backlog. It's bottlenecked.
Okay.
But if they would get rid of all that nonsense and let as many people go in there and work as they want to, regardless if they had a mask on or a vaccine, they would just open things up and quit worrying about the stinking environment, whether a tractor trailer is burning the wrong kind of diesel fuel and putting out the wrong emissions. We could have everything back to going again in a few, 3, 4, 5 months. It wouldn't take long because we're Americans and we can work whenever we're getting paid and we ain't got to listen to the government tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what's happening. And so you enter this trucker convoy thing. They realize that because they're like us, they're the middle-class people. And they're saying, you know what, this is nonsense. The reason that we're in bad shape is not, it is preventable and it is changeable and it is fixable if you people up there in the government would just listen to us. And so they started a protest, if you will. Not the same type of protest as the Black Lives Matter, but it's a peaceful protest. As far as I know, they hadn't broken anything. Have they? And this is so on our side, you got
They had some agitators that come in and
perhaps
started
the
some
supply
mess,
chain.
but
yeah. So you got like on our side of things, we see where people are starting to wake up. Citizens, workers, middle class people, the people that are being affected the most are starting to wake up to the nonsense that's happening in the government, and they're like, we got to do something. And then on the government side, you got, man, this is our last chance. We better just go at it like nobody else's business, regardless of the laws or the Constitution or anything. We have to accomplish the goal now, right? It's the last ditch effort that they have. So here we find ourselves in this balance. So my question for everyone today would be, where does the Christian land in this process?
that's what I've been asking. Same thing. Because we didn't see Jesus standing around with signs protesting. We've always heard that Christians really shouldn't put themselves out there that way. But we have to look back. Jesus debated with the Pharisees many times. I mean, he stood his ground. Then when he went into the temple and he flipped the tables and run them out, doing the things they did, was that a protest? I mean, would you consider that protesting?
It seemed as if he had something against them making a merchant out of the church, and therefore he took an action to show them that he had a problem with it. I don't know what you call it.
Well, the protest is defined as to participate in a public demonstration in opposition to something.
Well, it seems then that would fit, as long as they don't change that definition this week.
Exactly.
That seems to would fit what he did.
I kind of had to look at why he went in and flipped the tables.
That would be a good thing to do.
And
Yeah.
threw the coins off and stuff. The first one, and I got in reading in Matthew, which is in all the Gospels, but it was a holy place for worshiping God. That's the most obvious one. Another is that they were taking advantage of people who had traveled many, many miles to celebrate the Passover. And they were jacking up the prices of sacrificial animals and stuff like that, taking advantage of them. So really, Christ was standing up for those people. And then another thing that you have to look at, where they were doing part of this, that the Gentiles only had one place to worship in the temple, small area to go and pray.
Yeah.
So really, he was standing up for the Gentiles too. So I kind of see this not necessarily a protest, but basically standing his ground in defense of people's right to worship.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yep.
So if we get involved with the truckers, or we support the truckers, are we protesting, or are we standing defending people's rights?
Right to choice,
Mm-hmm.
free will.
So you mentioned you mentioned people trying to take advantage of the temple, of the people that were going to the temple, and then also using the temple for the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't our body the temple now?
It's supposed to be, yeah. That's what it says.
Mm-hmm.
For the believer, your body is the temple. There are also those that would want to take advantage of
Our bodies.
our bodies. Put something in it.
Without consent, or that is made of
And
some.
also, abuse your rights and without consent and profit from it. Make a lot of money on some sort of something they could give you and make you think you needed it.
Yeah.
That's hitting on a whole lot of what I come up with. In conclusion, to tell you the truth, because I had to really think about this, man. Because I'm all behind the truckers.
Yeah.
Am I right or am I wrong about this?
Mm-hmm.
What should I do? And I studied a lot. One of the things we can do to protest peacefully, like the Bible tells us to, is to protest in prayer. We can live out God's word and protest, but I think it's okay if we speak out too.
Absolutely.
Because Jesus spoke out. He corrected the Pharisees. He rebuked them. I think is how we go about things is part of it. And I believe that the problem in America, we're not supposed to resist authority, and we're supposed to obey the law of the land. But what this administration is doing right now is illegal.
It is illegal.
They've stepped outside of their authority. And even SCOTUS has said that with the federal vaccine mandates.
Mm-hmm.
So if I look at the Bible, I don't see anywhere where it says for me to follow lawlessness.
It doesn't. In fact, and that's part of the thing that would distinguish the difference between a outright protest, a right. I mean, not like an outright, like a correct protest, I guess is the right word. That's the thing that distinguishes a correct protest from a riot, is what you're doing breaking the law. Because as soon as what you do in a protest breaks the law, it becomes illegal, and you should have no part in that. Rioting is always wrong, right? We don't loot, we don't break, we don't burn, we don't tear up stuff. There was there's a website that's great for Christians, and I'm not saying that it's always right, but I like to start there a lot of times, gotquestion.org. Mm-hmm. They answered this question. I guess people are asking it more and more now. One of the answers that they gave to this was, in addition to giving a definition for what protest actually was, which really closely matches yours, just to express a disagreement in idea or action, or to a group of people publicly or strongly demonstrate against some policy or situation, if you're applying it like right now. Protests are usually political in nature and can range from peaceful sit-ins to lawless rioting. In America, the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights guarantees the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, for a Christian in America, peaceful protesting is a right guaranteed by our Constitution.
That's what I would, yep.
Participating in a peaceful protest is not breaking the law. Of course, legality is different than morality. Rioting is always wrong, but it is the right of a Christian to be involved in a peaceful protest.
kind of what I would, and we're following the law.
Following the law.
I think
Because it's given to us. And if you take that even further, Congress, all our representatives and our senators, their purpose is to be our voice, not to be our decision makers on their own or our conscience. Because the Constitution says they're made up of we the people. And collectively, they're supposed to be our voice. Well, we're just trying to get them to hear our voice.
Exactly.
You know, and that's completely legal. It follows the Constitution. So we're not breaking the law. We're not, you know, rebelling against authority.
Nope.
In doing so.
In all this, you got to ask yourself, why are you doing it? Or do you feel like something wrong is being done to the people and you want to stand for truth? Or are you just trying to get on board of something that sounds exciting and hoping to get into a fight or whatever?
Yeah.
Right.
Motive means a lot. That was one of the questions they gave you was, is
a
it
big
worth the
deal.
cause? Yeah, you're exactly right.
We need to stand for truth and be willing to stand up for truth. But we're not trying to incite violence, as the term's going around. We're not out to start fights. We are standing up for aggression that's coming
What's
toward
right?
truth. Yeah. And people are out there, powers are out there attacking the truth. We've got to stand for truth, speak up for truth.
Could you consider it an evil influence on the church for the church to be under the delusion that they are not allowed to speak?
Yes. Yep.
I
believe it is a deception.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's out of ignorance. You know, I don't mean that in a bad way.
Ignorance, just a lack of knowledge. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have ever thought we'd be fighting fascism?
Really?
Anyhow, 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Exactly.
You know?
Snuck up on us. You got some cool diagrams over there, man. What you got?
Nothing really.
Just doodling.
Just doodling the whole time. Bored to death.
Yeah. So, like, I'll start out by saying my brain does not think very fast. Like, I envy my father and how fast his brain thinks. I envy Robin from how fast his brain thinks, and even David and Brian. You know, it takes me several days
I
to
appreciate you just being kind and throwing my name down.
You're welcome, man.
Oh, yeah, and you, Brian.
It takes me several days to work through a question. So even just like this one that we just asked, you know, where does the Christian stand in all of this? So say all that to say I don't really know the answer. These are just like the initial thoughts that I had.
I would say just off the bat, though, that is a great sign of maturity and logical thinking on your part.
Mm-hmm.
For someone who just like jumps to a rational, just a knee-jerk reaction, that's bad too.
Yeah. It doesn't really help you out too much whenever you're in a debate or anything like that.
Well, you know. But once you, but here's the thing though, like once you go through topics and study and things like that, then once that is in there and you found the truth of things, you don't have to worry about changing your mind. I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
So when it comes up the next time, you'll be like, oh yeah, well, you know what? One time I spent about 6 months thinking about that.
Yeah.
And you will never change my mind because here's the truth.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, you're good, man. You're good. So like my mind also thinks in sermons, you know, so like you have the abortion sermon and here's all the things that you need to know about abortion and like topics and different arguments and stuff like that. Well, I've been thinking about a sermon lately called, in my mind, you know, the recipe for life, because a lot of people follow schemas and social constructs in their life. They don't really, you know, we have free will, but a lot of people don't exercise free will, you know. And so there seems to be a recipe for life. So for an example, with your financial life, I believe if you're a Christian, there's a very clear recipe in the Bible to where if you want to become very successful, you want to, you know, make money, you want to give to the church, whatever, you know, God tells you this is how you do it. And there's sacrifice in that recipe. Like you may not be able to eat some flour or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, that's something I'm still working on. Doesn't really affect us too much right now, but so when I think about it is what can I affect today? You know, because whenever we talk about the government, I think what can Andrew affect in the government? And not really a whole lot if I don't, be involved, if I'm not involved in the government. Yeah. So I can't really affect it a whole lot if I'm not going to touch it, So you follow that chain all the way down and it goes pretty much to your local community and your family. And I think right there, it's the Christian's job to stand. Like that's where, like if you're touching something as a Christian and you're meddling with it or, just interacting with it, not suggesting it's bad, but I think you have a responsibility as a Christian to stand there for truth. Now, next question, what does standing look like? Is it literally standing on the side of the road with a piece of cardboard and some cool markers? I don't necessarily think it's that. I think standing for truth can be a really difficult thing sometimes. And we all have a presence about us that people know who you are based off of your character and your name. And based off of that affects a lot. And so people should know that this person's a Christian, Like I should know Brian's a Christian. I should know that Ambit Plumbing is a Christian organization. And if people don't know, then you let them know. And then they do know, and they know that you're going to operate in that structure of who you are. So, Ambit Plumbing doesn't stand for abortion. We're not going to support Planned Parenthood or, there's certain things that you do. But the thing that affects me the most is the American heritage. There's a lot that I feel like a lot of our privileges as Americans warp our view when it comes to standing. Because whenever the mask mandates first came out, I was like, all right, you know what, maybe you are supposed to wear masks. I didn't research the science or anything like that, and COVID had just happened, so you wore masks. Well, after I was like, these things are stupid, I was very, man, I'm an American. I ain't ever going to wear no mask, and you can't force me to because of my freedoms and my liberties. God bless America. Stuff like that. And even I feel like that sometimes affects the way that I view the vaccine. But I feel like it affects it a lot. Now, I don't like the vaccine for several reasons. I've already worked through that, and there's more reasons outside of your American heritage to not take the vaccine. But where the American heritage messes me up is when it comes to Christians that weren't Americans. So like if we look back at the Christians that lived in like the Babylonian era or the Roman era, and the progression of those eras into now, what that would look like would be like, the Christians in China or the Christians in Afghan and stuff like that aren't, they don't have that freedom, but they have intense Christianity, I think, where there's no like, yeah, I go to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, and I'm a Christian, I'm going to make it to heaven. There's none of that. It's your life is on the line and you believe it, and you've got a hold of some truth, and that's going to affect everything that you make a decision of because it's so good that you can't let go of it. So we have those Christians that are super intense, but then they grow super fast because people see that they're willing to die for that truth that they have a hold of, and it's completely changed their life. So where's the line for that? What if theoretically America became fascist? Would I get a gun and say, I'm not going to stand for all this, and then the government come kill me? And then
I think that's kind of the point of being able to speak out and protest now, because that is how you get to a point where you're like China, where you're not able to for fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that consequence on us right now, and if we don't want to get to that point, we better do something now publicly. So there's
Let's not go that extreme as far as death goes. Let's look at what's at hand. You have truckers, they don't want to get a vaccine, and these are independents for the most part. They're not around other people. They're not affecting other people. I mean, in their workplace, they ride in a truck alone. And there has been several that have wanted an exemption, religious exemption,
Mm-hmm.
and they're being denied. It's happening all over on different levels.
Mhm.
If they're able to do that with the truckers, they're this close to standing at the doors of our church and telling our congregation, you can't enter here and congregate unless you have a vaccine.
Yep.
Right. You ain't got to go as far as death. We're talking about, we're right there, real close to it right now.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a real thing people need to look at.
That's where I think it comes, like, the truckers standing for truth in Canada, you know, they're affecting what they can touch. You know, they're truckers. This is what we do. We're not going to stand for it. And now they're like, they literally, we're not going to stand for it. So they're not delivering goods, you know, and sometimes standing, it hurts and it's hard. But the way I would see it, like, in today, you know, just since we're plumbing, you know, if someone said, hey, can you wear a mask? I'm liberal and stuff like that. For me, standing would almost be refusal of service. Like, you know, like, no, because masks, they're a lie. You know, I'm sorry that you feel that you need masks, but we can't serve you because, you know, that's not who we are. And, you know, sometimes that hurts. Sometimes you lose business and stuff like that. But that's standing locally. And I feel like the truckers are standing locally. And
If you take that to the next level, though, and you're talking about an all-out, just a protest, a peaceful protest, a protest the way that is given to us through our Constitution, we're given the right to do. Think about the March for Life, which happens every year. People march to Washington in opposition to abortion. You don't hear a lot about it. You know why?
yeah.
Because it's peaceful.
Mhm.
Nobody gets hurt. They're not throwing rocks. But they go up to where the government is, our officials that we have elected to represent us, who are not listening to us,
Mhm.
and they publicly display their grievance with the way that they're handling things. Would you say that that is wrong? The March for Life.
Okay. So no,
No.
I wouldn't say that. And I'm not saying also that we are at the point of China
Yeah.
to where we can't do our liberties as Americans.
Yeah, and I'm not really giving these as any refute to what you said. I agree with the things that you were saying, actually. But I'm just saying, as a Christian, then, you know, if we're going to affect the things that we can touch, we can touch our government by being public in our grievances as an organized group.
And do it lawfully.
And do it lawfully. And that's the point. So if the Canadian trucker people, they started all this, well, just like if there was two ladies that started the March for Life because they felt so strongly about abortion, and they said, hey, look, we need as many people as possible to come up here so that our government can actually see, literally see the amount of people that have a grievance with the way they're doing things. So that's the only way that it really makes a difference, right? They have to be able to see it because they're not listening and they're making their own choices. So you have to publicly display the grievance.
Well, I'm not even sure that would make a difference because in that example, you know, what if we don't, like, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. So keeping it in that example, you know, what does that marching protest have, like, what's the incentive for the government to change? I mean, so what if some people are out there expressing their discomfort, you know, they don't owe me anything, like they're not holding anything back, you know, whereas the truckers, they're like,
Yep.
you want your goods?
I'll give you that. I give you that. The March for Life is a good
it's a good display.
It's a good display of what it is we need. And so how would they, if we were going to modify it, I say, to make it effective, what would they do? Well, we'd all would just sit down up there and we would never move. And so if a truckers come down here and they've got 100,000 trucks and they say, hey, we got 100,000 trucks, but it'd be great if we had 100,000 people. I think, man, just go sit down. I'd go.
Mm-hmm.
I know people right now that are starting to rent buses or line them up, get ready so they can go to Washington when it happens. You see what I mean? And so you have, it is this public display that doesn't stop. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I give you that. Yep. They go up there. It's just a display once a year. They do the March for Life. Nobody talks about it anymore. Pretty much the media shuts them down. They don't want to see how many people there are. They don't care. They'll keep it really quiet. And that's why it doesn't seem to have that much impact, because you're not getting a lot of publicity. But if you do something that you can't be ignored. For instance, do you remember back in the day, you've read books about it, we weren't there, Martin Luther.
Mm-hmm.
He had a problem with the way the church was doing things.
Yeah.
So what did he do? He stood in opposition to it over and over and over, to the point that he was nailing things on the church door, challenging them to, let's come on now. I'm not going to stop. In fact, it got so bad and they refused to listen so much that there was a split, right? We're not listening to what you have to say. And then people will say, oh, we will listen to what you have to say. And sometimes that's the result of it. We're dealing with our government, which is doing things that are totally illegal. I'm not doing it. Not because, well, one, because I'm American and I ain't got to, but two, because that is my protest quietly. If that doesn't work, I don't see a problem with protesting more openly. And that is, let's just take North Carolina, for example. Governor Pooper decides one day he's going to say, hey, you need to close your business. We're all locking down again. Nope, I ain't doing it. And I think we should all run up there, just hang out around the governor's mansion, beg for food. You won't let me work? Feed me. Until he does something different. Call for him to resign. You can do it. They did it in California, although it didn't work. Sign a petition for him to re-election, to be gone, to get out. And I think that's where we're at right now with these different types of protests. When you have countries like London, and even Canada for that matter, Canada is not a free country. Let's just be honest about that, right? They are socialist, totally socialist. And they're doing more for their freedom than America. What in the world, man?
Well, somehow protesting, first of all, protest is not in the Bible. And somehow over the years, protesting has turned into having a definition, or is perceived anyhow, as rebellion. Mm-hmm. That's not right. I mean, that's not true. It's not what this country was founded on or based on. I mean,
the country started off with a protest.
Get here, yeah,
right. You had a bunch of people across the big pond that couldn't stand it anymore. They were like, I'm not doing it. And they came over here and they started, and this worked better. And so they looked back across the big pond. They said, you know what? We're done. And so the big people over there came over here and said, you're not done. You're going to do what we say. And they said, no. And there was a protest. We didn't like what you said. We organized ourselves to demonstrate against the policy and the situation. Now, that demonstration ended up involving guns, right? And so, you go from protest to war. But I don't think that was a riot, and I don't think that was wrong. Mm-hmm. I think, yes, here we are about it. I think after our country was set up, we had, you remember the Boston Tea Party? I mean, that was one big organized protest. That the government was not listening to the people. They organized themselves. They took a stand for what was right to show the government that they weren't going to do it anymore. You needed to fix it.
It seems like you need a different word for, it seems like there's overlap, because when we think of protests, like right now we think of, walking out in the streets with a sign, or BLM tearing up businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And that's what before today, that's what I would have said a protest is. But really it sounds like, and even according to the definition of a protest, whenever we say you need to stand for truth, stand is the word for protest. You're standing against something.
A communication of grievances gathering.
Yeah.
In law, it's called petitioning. It's called petitioning is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow or another, we've allowed the media and everything else to go into protest. And like I said, now the first thought is rebellion. But we really are supposed to petition our government.
Mm-hmm.
We have to.
Part of the law.
We have to.
So I think if what the truckers are doing or anything else, Christians can petition, but you need to conduct yourself as a Christian.
Yeah.
And follow the example Jesus did. He stood his ground. That's all he did.
I was thinking earlier in all this with the the truck rally and protests. If you were to be a part of this group, if you were there with the truckers or with whatever protest, and you're standing because you're wanting to petition the truth and for the right of the people, if a news agency came up to interview you out of the crowd, what would be your attitude, and how would you communicate while you're there?
I wouldn't really want to bring attention to myself. I don't think that's the Christian way either.
I mean, are you going to be like, mad and aggravated and telling off the news and say, this is what's going on, blah, 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 blah? Or are you just going to respectfully give, this is what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's wrong about it. This is why we're here. We'd like a change.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
A believer is not someone who is angry, who is looking for violence, who is argumentative. A believer should be showing the fruits of the Spirit in everything they do. That includes petitioning everything. The way you work at your job, the way you show up in your family, the way that you are out in public when you think nobody you know is watching. A believer should be different, should be showing the fruits of the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That website, gotquestions.org, had a list of questions you should ask yourself before you join any group of protesters. The first one is it a worthy cause, right? So if we just want to apply that to, we want to be able to make a decision about our own bodies and not have to put a vaccine in it, a vaccine mandate. Is it a worthy cause? Yes. You should be able to have that right. Would Jesus support the conviction behind this cause? I think so, man. Your body's your temple. We don't really know what it is. It's made with aborted fetuses. I think that there's a pretty good religious exemption there, I would argue, right?
Well, the Bible would say you shouldn't put alcohol in your body.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So will my participation violate any legitimate laws? No, we're not doing it. Do I know the real motive behind the protest, and can I support the motive? Yes. It is free will. It is the ability to choose, right? What message would my involvement send to people outside the protest? That's a big question. Think about that, right? And I think that is how you conduct yourself while you're in it. It's how people outside the protest will conceive you, okay? There's always going to be those people that look at you like that guy is not right because they are so far on the other side of right. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. But am I being used as a pawn, which happened a lot in the Black Lives Matter, by the way? And I'll read you some things out of their own disclosures, that their own about us, that'll show you that. Is the protest being used as an excuse for violence, destruction, or forms of evil? Again, we're talking about Black Lives Matter right now, and I don't think what the truckers are doing at all. There's no violence. There's no destruction. Is the protest the best way to further the message I want to proclaim? At this point, this is the only way that they could further the message that they're trying to proclaim because they're not listening otherwise, right?
Are you being paid to protest?
Yeah, that's a good one. What do I expect the results to be? That's a great question. What do they expect? Well, they expect you not to be able to tell me I have to do this. There's a freedom that goes along with it, freedom of choice. How will I treat, this is a big one too. This is the last one they've had. How will I treat those who do not join me in the protest? So we've mentioned that here. We hope that looking back 20 years from now that we can say to our children and our grandchildren, look, we were on the right side of this, and we stood up for what was right in the face of everyone who was opposing us. Mm-hmm. But as those people who opposed us began to see and change their mind, we didn't look at them and say, ha, you got what you deserve. We said, hey, man, it's okay. They lied to you and you believed it. It's all right, but come on over. It's fine, right? We welcome them on in, people to come to that. That's how we should be acting. It's not the people. It's the cause of the evil that's causing them to be that way, and they're blinded by it. So you got all these questions you got to consider about a protest. And some of the things I learned about the Black Lives Matter, this is always fun to me. I'll just read it. Perhaps the most troubling in Black Lives Matter stances is their stance on the family. This is their stance. Are you ready? They wrote this down.
I just know it's going to be good.
This is written down in their organizational documents.
Yeah. Black Lives Matter, taking a stance on the family.
Isn't it funny?
It's going to be good.
Here it is. This is a quote. All right. This is a quote. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. It sounds a lot like that stinking commercial we played the other day that said your kids don't belong to you, they belong to the community.
Yeah.
Western prescribed nuclear family is actually the God's ordained way. That's what it's supposed to be. So that's what they're using. They use that Western prescribed nuclear family. We would say that God's family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The way God established it.
One thing that strikes me about that, we talked about it a long time ago, not even in this podcast, but on the surface, that sounds good.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't think about it and you just hear that, you're like, yeah, I would like it if the community took care of me. And if I took care of the community and we all kind of watched each other's kids and we made sure that nothing bad happened, on the surface, that sounds really good. I just finished up reading a book. And it's funny, whenever I was in college, I'd listen to this one lady. She always say, leaders are readers. And I hated it. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. That's why I hated it. But I just finished up a book by Vody Bachman called Expository Apologetics. And he gave an example of the marriage now and how, gay or a man falls in love with another man and he says, it's my right to be married to that man. And they say, it's my right to love. And on the surface, a right to love sounds pretty good, But as I was reading in the book, Buddy Bachman, he broke it down to its core principles, and he says that is more of a question of rights. And we can both agree on a question of rights because you're wanting rights, I'm wanting rights. The Bible gives us these rights, and he talks about the rights that obviously the Bible gives them, and then he talks about the rights that they're wanting and how they contradict and stuff like that. But whenever I hear what the BLM was talking about, it comes down to a question of rights. In communism and Marxism, you don't own anything, including your children or yourself. There was off of the World Economic Forum that we talked about a couple weeks ago, they had a commercial, and it was like 10 predictions for the year 2030. And one of them said, you will own nothing. And then the next said, and you will like it.
You will like it.
And you will like it. And one person asked, I think it was, I forgot his name now. But one person asked, if I don't own anything, then who owns everything? Someone's going to own something eventually down the road. So is it the higher ups or what? But if you like that statement, I own nothing, you have to think about all of it, even the core principles. If you own nothing, you don't own your life. And that's a scary thought if you follow that. And one thing I would say, we have a man in our church who, whenever we talk to him, if you throw around the word specific labels such as conservatism or libertarianism or capitalism or all those things, you get thrown off because we've been so ingrained to hate certain labels. If you walk out here and you say, yeah, I'm a Trump supporter, there's people that'll love you just off saying that, and there's people that'll hate your guts just off saying that. And it's just the label, really, at the end of the day. And so I would challenge everybody, whenever it comes to a view, forget the label and think about the principle behind the label. Would you want, so we're bouncing back because the mandate violates us. But the other side would bounce back if we say, you can't abort babies. That's an attack on them. And so you need to think of the you need to think of the principle behind it and say, well, if I'm mandating, would I like something mandated on me that I don't agree with? And
yeah, but here's the thing. And I'll refer back, and that's a great point, because that is absolutely true. And so I'm not saying that that's not true, but what I'm saying is it may not be as effective as we think, because if you go all the way back to the, it's on our resource page on the website, and you look at the Russian KGB guy and his explanation of how they were doing this psychological warfare, and that you will reach a point where people will become so brainwashed in one ideology that you can show them the absolute truth of what's going on around them, and they will still reject it. And we've hit that point by a long shot. I have a family member that is at that point. It does not matter what you say or show, proof, evidence. It could be written in the Bible. If it goes contrary to a democratic narrative or a directive, she will reject it wholeheartedly. And so you've got you've got those categories. Now, there are still people that are not quite influenced and they don't understand, like the gentleman you're talking about. He's thinking,
mm-hmm.
and it's coming around. But even we've got proof. You got these guys in California, the Newsom guy and Garcetti guy, about the whole mask thing. Mask mandate, mask saves lives. Everybody's got to wear a mask. And then they go to these big games with 30, 40,000 people in the stands, and they don't wear a mask. And Newsom says, well, I only had it off for the picture. That was a lie. They have video from all the cameras showing it. You got the other guy that says, well, I took my mask off, but I held my breath while the picture was taken, so there was no danger to me ever being infected. Right? It reminded me of like Bill Clinton or something. I smoked weed, but I didn't inhale. Whatever, dude, you still inhaling. Listen to you talk, right? And so this is the thing. You can show these people that stuff, and they'll reject it. The KGB guy, they will reject it to the point till they find themselves inside one of the concentration camps. Where's Whoopi Goldberg right now?
Mm-hmm.
She is inside the concentration camp, and she's still not quite got it yet.
Well, then what do we do with people? Because what it sounds like is you're talking about how God has given some people over to a reprobate mind.
Pretty much.
What do you do with the people of the reprobate mind?
You don't do anything with them. You work on the ones you can change. You see what I mean? You can't. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
God tells us there's several places where God says, hey, you know what? That guy right there, don't worry about him no more.
Don't pray for Saul anymore.
Yeah. Don't cast your pearls before the swine. You have to try everybody until you find one that's like, oh, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. You're good. You're good where you're at. Fine. Move on. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're trying to influence the people right here in our little core neighborhood of things, to let them see we work and we spend time with everyone that will listen and that has things, right? And the people who just attack us, we just ignore it. We don't respond to that at all. We just keep on going on. Hopefully we will find ourselves on the right side of this thing in the end, right? And we can have an impact. And the same thing goes with government. I'm not so sure that the people in our government are not in that position where they are like, you know what? Doesn't matter if you show them exact truth and all this evidence. They are so set in where they're at right now, they're not going to change. And so what can we do then? Well, we can, like the truckers right now are forcing to change. These people in Canada, if the truckers are serious and they stay there to the point that, we are not leaving until you change, they will be forced to, whether they like it, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they can't live without it. The city's shut down. People there, the citizens are like, you know what, I'll deal without, man, because it is worth it. And I feel the same way here. If they show up in Washington, D.C. after that, and they shut down Washington, D.C. for 2 months, and it's hard for us to go get chicken or eggs or milk or any type of food, I will be okay with that. I'm fine. There are ways. Do what we got to do so that we can take back what God had given us in our freedoms from the very beginning. And so, and in the meantime, when we start approaching these elections like we've got this year in 2022, we have to be teaching people and showing them evidence and truths and things like that so that you have this whole thing called a primary where you get to pick who's going to run on your team, so to speak. We got to have discernment when we pick these people. There's got to be a way of saying these people that are in there, they're not listening. They have become reprobate mind, whatever you want to call them. They need to go away. We need someone else in their place. And you primary them out So this guy and this guy are on our team supposedly, but this guy's wrong, you know, and so he's got to go. We got to get this guy in there. And that's a lot of what's going to happen come 2022. You'll see it right now. And people don't like it. But, you know, Donald Trump, for the conservative side of things, he is doing that. He was in the place. He got to see the ones that claim to be conservatives but are not. They're in it for whatever benefits them. And so he's primarying a lot of people out. In North Carolina in particular, we are struggling right now because we had just drawn redistricting lines for our representatives, which we had approved through our, you know, local government, our House and our Senate. But the Democrats didn't like it because they say that it was gerrymandering, right? And so I would contend that every map you ever draw is gerrymandered. Mm-hmm. It's the whole point of drawing a map so that you can be the one who has the best chances of getting the most representatives.
Pick up a seat here.
Pick up a seat here. Yep. And so when they carried it to our state Supreme Court, just so happens that our state Supreme Court is majority Democrat. Mm-hmm. And so it was rejected. They have to do it over. And so this is the type battles that we fight on here, right? Do you think that it made it to the Supreme Court because nobody protested it? No. That's the reason it's there, because people said, hey, I have a big issue with this. And I could show you some maps, particularly I think, what was his name? The Bongino man. He showed where Jerry Nadler's, his district, the map they drew of Jerry Nadler. Looks like a mouse maze up there in New York because they had to keep everybody, minorities is the way they say it, in his sector because they are already programmed to vote Democrat. That's the only way he would have been able to keep his seat. And it seriously looks like there's no straight lines in that thing at all. And when you got a place like New York City, which is heavily, densely populated, you know, apartment buildings and things like that. And, you go 2 blocks and you're in a whole different section of town kind of thing. It looks weird. The biggest one they complained about in North Carolina, they said was shaped a little bit like Louisiana, which is a pretty squared off state if you really want to look at it. You know, I mean, no, that's not fair. That is not a representative district. It is not a representative area of North Carolina. What would be? How do you do it?
Do away with the map.
Yeah, whatever, man. Yeah.
Not even the roads are straight.
And it just so happens you have to use addresses for people where they live on streets and roads to be able to draw in the boundaries. You can't just cut across my backyard to draw a straight line. Idiots, man. Anyway, what do you think? Should a Christian protest?
Petition. Stand your ground. I think we need to quit labeling everything as protest.
Particularly because they don't go by what the actual definition of a protest is. Mm-hmm. And I'll put a link there underneath our show notes just so people can read how Jews became white folks and become enlightened. You can. It's expensive. Paperback book is $34.95.
What? That should be like $13.
They don't want anybody to buy it. You get the electronic version for $15.98.
That's still ridiculous.
That's outrageous.
That doesn't even sound like a good book you want to read.
Yeah.
Like, why would I pay $30 for a book?
Look, it's got 58 ratings and it's almost 5 stars. Since 1998, it's got 58 ratings. Give it a read. Whoopi Goldberg bought one. Yeah.
Man.
Anyway, there you have it, folks. What do you think? Got anything else? All good to go. All right. Well, hey, if you're going to protest, just don't break nothing. Follow the Diamond Dave's rule of ninja, but apply it to don't be, rioting. Nobody don't deserve rioting. That's how it works.
Thank you for listening to the League of Logic podcast. If anything we have said made you think or made you mad, please check it out for yourself. We want you to look for it and know the truth. We want you to know what the Word of God says, because we've established that is the truth. Please send us a comment or a question on our website. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a rating and review. It would help us out a lot in promoting what we are doing. And subscribe to the channel. That's a big one. Also, check out our store. We have hoodies, t-shirts, all sorts of cool stuff that would also help promote what we are doing. Thank you again for listening to the League of Logic podcast. We look forward to you tuning in on the next episode.
And I hate Black History Month. Anybody else hate it?
Is that what this month is?
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention.
I noticed that on TV there was a lot more like
Every
agendas pushed than anything. And I was like, what's going on? And it popped up Black History Month. And I love I don't like Morgan Freeman, but what he said about Black History Month. He was in an interview. One guy said, how do you like Black History Month? He said, I hate it. He's like, what? Because you would expect Morgan Freeman to be all for it. He said, I don't like it because when's White History Month? And the guy was like, I don't know. He said, what about Asian History Month? Mm-hmm. And he was like, I don't know.
Obviously, we need a Jewish History Month.
Yeah. And then I think like March is like Women's Rights Month or Women History or something like that. When's Man's History Month? You know, I like that.
And then you've got June, which is gay, lesbian, whatever month, Pride Month. And
they actually have a Pride Month?
Yeah, June. And then
when's Conservative Month?
So when's Nuclear Family Month?
I know, right?
Yeah,
for real.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh well, whatever, man. Protest. Yeah. Stood it up.